into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of the Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Welcome into another edition of Gas, ladies and gentlemen. I am Gresh, along with the host and the star of Dirty Boxing. That would be one Jason Anik. Follow your ears, I say to everyone. And you could tell who was standing out there, just like Chorizo Rosenstrike. How you doing, brother? You looked good. I gotta say, you looked good. The suit was okay. I would recommend a tie, but that's just me.
Oh, that's a great conversation to have about the tie. It's great to see you. I often say on all these shows, I get in the pre-show and I don't even want to be nice and say hello because I want to save it for the real thing. So it is always great to be with you. That tie conversation is so interesting because John recently, my brother John Anik, UFC broadcaster, started with a new tailor recently. And I dared say something to John about no tie. And before I could even get the word tie out of my mouth, you're saying a tie is in my contract. He's all about the tie. So that's very interesting. I had never even considered it, Gresh, if I'm being honest, because a lot of what I've done is regional stuff that felt a little more casual.
Yeah, it depends. Like for my UMass games, sometimes they were like, I don't wear a tie. Now, here's the difference. We're on camera calling a football game for about 30 seconds over the course of a game. You were the interviewer. You were hopping in and out of the ring. One glorious interview that for those who haven't seen it, it's too hot button or profane to be able to mention here on these family airwaves, for God's sakes. But there's definitely the first fight on the main card. It's worth checking out. The great job that Jay did as a situation started to get into a tornado a little bit. But Dirty Boxing was a great success. And, they had a good turnout down there at the hangar. And you stood out. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's nice of you to say, and it was a crazy experience, great night of fights. A lot, I've said this over and over, but on the main card, there were 72 prior UFC appearances for the fighters on the main card. So there was a lot of talent there. It was a great night. We could go on and on talking about Dirty Boxing. I think we got some Boston fans that may want to talk about other sports, but it's great to see you. And I hope to have you down in Miami at some point because the events are going to keep rolling. Malky Kawa, the CEO, he moved the date yesterday on the Etiquette Florian podcast, but I think DBX3 is August 1st. So it's a lot of fun to get opportunities to try to get better, but it's all about the fighters, is what my brothers always sort of told me. And they're really bringing some high caliber guys that perhaps have their future to be in Dirty Boxing rather than it be a jumping off point for some other promotion.
No, that's a very good point. I think it's the whole, can you grow there? And whether it's the bare knuckle FC that I went to on Saturday night at Mohegan Sun or some of these other startups, I think they're almost struggling with the, hey, we got these UFC guys. Like Phil Hawes, for example, made his debut in Dirty Boxing. That is an experienced UFC fighter. In the heavyweight main event of BKFC that I was at, actually, the co-main event had Yorgan De Castro, who's been in a UFC octagon. And then in the main event, it was Parker Porter, who is as wide as he is tall. He's the most unique shaped human being I've ever seen. But for some of these organizations, those are the kind of people that you want until you can build your kind of base of guys. So there's a whole giant world for a lot of MMA fighters to be able to at least make a check and survive to the next one.
No, it's a great point. When you bring up those two names, Parker Porter and Yorgan De Castro, I mean, as I look at this fight card, Jairzinho Rosenstrike, Alex Caceres, Saeed Yokup, Kakramanov, Alex Nicholson, Rob Perez, the Wolf, who's Jessica Rose Clark. There's just a lot of guys on here. Francisco Masa Randuba, Francisco Trinaldo. And when I told my brother Luis Saldana was on this card on an early prelim, John thought he may be the best fighter on the whole card. So they're starting to have some depth, some bouts of consequence, which I think is very important.
Yeah, and the whole proof of concept. People start to get comfortable with all these different leagues that are out there. And ladies and gentlemen, we have successfully taken 5 minutes talking about MMA and the fight world to avoid what is the biggest story in our world today on gas, and that is Rafael Devers is now a San Francisco Giant. I don't know if he'll be the San Francisco treat. I know that the Gigante are paying the Giant contract of one Rafael Devers, and that seemed to be a big deal to the Red Sox. And Jay, as I kind of threw in the rundown, how did we get here? Who do we blame? We have a lot to unpack with this Devers story. Where do you want to begin?
I almost want to begin by throwing it back to you and getting your opinion on the whole thing, right? I could tell you how we got here, who is to blame, and where we go from here, but that jives very much with my sort of opinion on this whole thing. And I feel like I may be on an island. So if you don't mind, if I flip it on you and put you on the spot here, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, this is John Henry 101 in a lot of ways. You gave John Henry a reason to trade the most expensive player on the roster. And Raffy Devers was never a leader. And this is where this ties into the Mookie Betts thing. Because why did this guy get his contract in the first place? It's because they had traded Betts. They had moved on from Bogarts. They had very little equity. And really, it was much more Betts than Bogarts, quite honestly. It was Mookie left. Oh my God, is Raffy going to do the same? They turn around, they gave this guy a big contract. And while he's worth the contract, I think we also have to understand, Jay, that I think a lot of people in sports equate, well, if you're one of the highest paid guys, you better be one of the leaders. And that's not Rafael Devers. And when you looked for leadership and unselfishness, it wasn't there for him. Now, the Red Sox did send some mixed messaging, but I don't think for a baseball player who's played the game his whole life, it should be out of the norm for someone to come to him and say, hey, listen, we actually might need you in the field, or we might need you here. So to me, Devers should not have gotten so offended. That stupid meeting that John Henry tried to have with Raffy Devers, where I was making jokes about who was doing the communicating. Well, apparently we found out nobody was communicating.
Well,
because neither side was listening. So it's just a big cluster.
And who knows if that was the last straw. But I have a strong opinion about this, and it sounds like you maybe agree with me in terms of thinking it maybe was time. But both sides wanted this, right? And so for me, right, Rafael Devers, incredible hitter. And I've blown up his spot a lot this year, but everything else is negative. The maturity, the selflessness, which certainly isn't there. Leadership, you talked about. Clubhouse cancer, right? So let's talk. There's a lot that goes into this. You talked about Tristan Casas, right? And how he's sort of, you thought maybe not the best culture guy. And the fact that you could say the same about your highest paid player in Rafael Devers, to me, it again feels a little bit like addition by subtraction. I may be on an island. I'm happy about this, right? A few other points I want to make, right? They locked up Garrett Crochet early and great, right?
Yep.
I've been talking all season about them locking up Alex Bregman. Maybe they lost a little bit of leverage perhaps here because now they don't have to pay those Devers dollars. If I'm Bregman, I say throw me a little bit more money, but I would love them to lock up Alex Bregman and his leadership. But there's star after star on this roster that's going to need to be paid. So I like this very much, right? I just think chemistry matters. I think playing for each other matters. There's a different vibe. Jarren Duran, I don't think he meant it negatively, but he's saying it's one guy. We got 25 guys here. Jarren Duran, the All-Star Game MVP from last season, who's a dude, maybe hasn't gotten it going to the full extent. A quote from David Ortiz. He talked about his tough times with the Red Sox. And I know I'm going fast. I tend to go fast, but
You're good.
Quote from Ortiz. I was mature enough to understand and keep things internal. Even in the best families, between the best brothers, shit happens. You have to have the maturity to resolve problems, he goes on. But the maturity, that word maturity keeps coming back. And does your highest paid player need to be a leader? Absolutely, if he's not going to be playing in the field. And the number of guys that move from third to first, this isn't some crazy thing. So for me, I was thrilled when I saw it. I was more thrilled when I saw that San Francisco's paying all the contract. If one of those pieces, and guess what? One of those pieces that comes back is going to be a big part of perhaps a championship team. One other quote, a tweet. The handle is at BOS Sports Gordo. I think it's from another tweet at June Lee, but a quote. According to multiple sources, Devers was also upset when rookie Christian Campbell volunteered to play first base this season, interpreting it as a slight to his own stature. There it is. So there you go. A slight, anyone rooting against someone else or get the fuck out of here with this stuff. So for me, I love Devers. I love his stick. I thought he looked like Ortiz sometimes, that he had such a good eye, you know, like Barry Bonds almost, in terms of really being able to have a feel for the strike zone. However, they've won 6 in a row. If the playoffs began today, the Red Sox are in the postseason. Yankees have lost 4 in a row. I am looking up.
Well, I'm not, because they took away their best hitter at the end of the day. And this is the sign that the youth movement is here. And the fact that Raffy Devers got offended by something that Christian Campbell did, I think tells us all we need to know about him and the player and what his mentality is really truly like. But this isn't a good thing for the Red Sox all the way around. And it's for 3 reasons. One, you're taking away your best hitter because you as management in part mismanaged the situation and the guy did show his true colors. Number 2, and the most important thing is, you thought this guy was going to be the center of your franchise. How in the bloody blue hell can management be that far off on Devers' personality and not recognizing that? And then number 3, apparently we're back into a little bit of a Luka Doncic situation here, Jay, where I don't know if the Red Sox exactly shopped Devers around. It kind of seems like, from the people that I'm hearing from, that this meeting that happened in Kansas City was a disaster, and then it turned into, okay, what do we do with the player? It took them a while to kind of land on what to do, and then it was, well, instead of finding the best package, it was, let's make sure we found someone who took on all the money. So and that's the thing. They didn't get enough in return, in my opinion. Now, these prospects, look, the Red Sox have traded prospects for years, Jay, and we've heard about, oh, my God, they gave away Jan Moncada. What has that guy done with the White Sox? So a lot of these youngs are fleeting. I just don't think the Red Sox went through the right kind of process to make sure they were doing best for themselves, other than just looking at a line item and going, we can cross this guy off.
But in a sport without a salary cap, I just don't think there would have been a lot of attractive packages out there for teams that would have been able to take on those dollars. And I'm going to trust, as a Red Sox fan, that by them finding a partner that's taking on all those dollars, they will use those other dollars. And you can talk all you want about volatility of prospects, but Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell, I don't think are 2 volatile prospects. I think they're guys that need to be. Jaron Duran's going to need some dollars. So, and Garrett Crochet, they signed young. Rafael Devers, they signed young, right? They were right on the stick, but he didn't mature. I really think it's a lot on him. And John Henry's won, I think, 4 chips, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I understand the Liverpool stuff. What are you laughing at, Cody's comments or something I said?
No. I'm laughing that the whole John Henry will reinvest the money. Yes, he will, into his pocket to make sure they stay under, I think it's 241 in salary and benefits, to make sure that they're not going to pay any tax this year. And that's why I giggled, because I think it's now, we're going to play the youngs. Here's what it's going to look like. And I think for the Red Sox this year, Jay, sadly, if they make the playoffs, great. If they don't and came close and the young players developed, then to them, they'll look like it's a good year. But it's really funny you brought up the whole tenure of John Henry, right? Because Sam Kennedy is the president of the Red Sox. Now, I've met Sam a bunch of times. I've talked to him a bunch of times. I like him. I like him a lot personally. But a part of his job is to be full of shit. And that's exactly what they rolled out, Jay. And here's another thing that irks me: on a Zoom at 8 o'clock at night before a 9:40 start. Now, mind you, Chaim Bloom, he made the trade of Christian Vasquez, right, years ago. He didn't go to Houston and fly to go meet with the team and say, here's what I'm doing. And it was really a demerit against Chaim Bloom. Now it's almost as if management is encouraging it, because we're hearing from players how they found out. I know there's a Jaron Duran story out there where is the communication with the rest of the roster? And I'm sorry, but if you're Craig Breslow and you know you're going to make this kind of move, then be with the team to explain it, or be on the plane to get your ass out there to talk to them the next day. And I think, unfortunately, Jay, we've now gotten to a point to where the Red Sox, that's their management style. We don't have to tell you everything. We don't have to tell the media. We can do a Zoom on Father's Day night at 8 p.m. to explain ourselves, when normally you would stand in front of the media and answer questions. And that's the stuff that is really bad. That's why I smirked at the whole, they're going to reinvest the money. No, what they're doing is they're reinventing the way they do business. And it's to push away from the fans when shit goes down, push away from the media when it goes down, and make sure that unless you know you're going to win the whole thing, you're under that luxury tax, because ultimately that is what matters to the owner more than anything else. And it makes me want to throw up.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff in there. The management, public relations stuff, I don't think is necessarily going to be tied to whether or not they use those dollars. I guess from my standpoint as a fan, I'm thrilled Alex Cora is still there. I still have very strong opinions as a fan that might put me on an island, but I really believe in Alex Cora. I really believe in chemistry and intangibles. And so I actually believe in this team more with one less stick, who can maybe not have everybody performing at their best from a confidence standpoint, from a culture standpoint. I really believe to be at your best, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's emotional. I think there's a lot of different components. So I think that Rafael Devers probably was a little cocky walking around. I like him. I know he's a big smile, big laughing guy. And I know Jared Carrabis, who is the mayor of Red Sox Nation, who devotes his life to this, is super upset that they traded Rafael Devers, but he also has probably a personal relationship with him. So Gresh, I hate to say it, but if they're going to make some magical run out of nowhere this season, it's more likely to happen, in my opinion, without Rafael Devers, and be some wildcard team that makes a run. So for me, I'm really looking positively. Yes, I could be proved wrong if they don't spend some of this money.
But I just look at the way it has been trending the last couple of years, but I would say it's more since COVID that it's really gotten worse in terms of the Red Sox. And let's remember this. When I mentioned that, again, I like Sam Kennedy, but there are times where he's full of it. When you look at the full John Henry run, yes, there are 4 world championships in there, and you can feel good about that. But since 2012, there have been more last place finishes than anything else. And if there's one thing this team, who on a bad year will spend $200 million on payroll on a bad year, there's no reason that should be happening. And to me, that's why we've gone down this road. I really think, Jay, for John Henry, it was, wow, if we think we'll be close, then I'll spend over the tax. Now it is, to me, 100% gone the other way. Unless we're close, I'm not paying any tax. So in the early run, John Henry gave you a little runway. Now there is no more runway. And when they made this Devers deal, even though they were in the middle of the Yankee series, they were 1 or 2 games under 500, enough to where it's like, F it, let the kids go out there and see if they can win a wild card spot for us, versus John Henry looking at it and saying, hey, we're close. Let's go the other way and try to bring something in and keep Devers. And I hate to be a fatalist about it, but the evidence is there that this owner has shifted his priorities. I'll tell you what, though, you know what you can do? When you're walking to some of the luxury suites at Fenway Park, you can stop by Linda Pizzuti's little veggie garden and pick yourself a kumquat or something like that.
Fair, but do they not have some of the absolute best young talent, prospect talent in Major League Baseball? They do.
Okay, I don't disagree with that, but didn't we hear the same thing 4 years ago? with
could talk about
Casas,
4 years
with
ago, or
Bogarts.
we could talk about 4 years ago, or we could talk about the guys that are actually here right now. I dare say, and this is probably more for John Henry's ears and not Andy Gresh's, but some of this, it's almost like operating with a young quarterback in the NFL, where perhaps they can bring in arms and spend some money because some of these guys, I mean, who did they lock? Christian Campbell, right, is locked up. Garrett Crochet is locked up.
Yep. I think Duran, like Duran is controllable. No, the young players they have control on. Here's the thing. 4 years ago, it was a different group of guys that we were touting. Now we're 4 years down the road, and it's a different group of guys that we're touting, and it doesn't mean they're any less talented. It's just an example of they've hit the reset button again. And you mentioned Alex Bregman. I would say, hang on, I would say this. If you're Alex Bregman and you look around at this Red Sox team, why would you stay here? All of the evidence in the last
because
5
of
or
how
6
enamored he was with the talent in spring training. And, maybe Walker Buehler, his boy, hasn't, been great yet, but I don't know. I think there's a great reason to say, and to be the face and be able to be the voice without cancerous Devers. I would love to know what Bregman would be saying if he was in the building, in the lineup right now and not injured. And weeks will fall off the calendar more quickly. I'm just far more bullish on this situation. And what are people going to complain about Rafael Devers' contract while he's with us? But then when the contract is gone, not give any credit for getting rid of said contract. And look, I don't think it's a bad contract necessarily for what the stick is, but the shtick the negative of the shtick overwhelms the positive of the stick.
Yeah, if these guys are good in return or one person emerges, then maybe I could give that to you. But dumping a contract for players that aren't commensurate to the talent that you're giving away, I don't need 4 studs. I need one guy who's going to be a stud. I need one guy who can develop, and then the 2 young players. I understand that. That's how trades
you might have gotten
ultimately
that. You might have gotten that. You don't know.
And here's the thing. You didn't get it with Betts. You got nothing with Bogarts. And if you end up with nothing with Devers, those were the people 5 years ago that people are rubbing peanut butter all over their nipples and going freaking crazy for. And now they're all gone. And that's my whole point. And that's my whole thing about Bregman is if Bregman looks at the history of the Red Sox the last 5 years, he better get a hard and fast no trade clause, because otherwise he's going to be the $40 million player on a 500 team that John Henry is just the next guy who's going to look at and say, we got to get rid of this dude because he makes more money.
Very good points. And I'm with you on a ton of it. I mean, what I will say is a lot of when you hear NFL executives talk about these draft picks and trying to accrue more draft picks because having more, you sort of get to take more chances. And I guess I do feel as though the Red Sox young guys that they've just brought up I really believe in them to such a great extent that if the young prospects they bring in these trades don't hit like they haven't, to your point, I still think they have that young talent to supplement whatever they may get in free agency, and they're building a culture. I do feel as though this does turn a page in a different sense, but not unlike the Mayo Vrabel thing. I believe Devers was an anchor holding them down in a lot of ways. Your points are the organization isn't going to give me what I want as a fan in return, and that's very well taken. Let me ask you a question.
Good, because I know that Cody threw something in there about Theo Epstein, and I am hard and fast that people have completely whiffed on this guy.
Well, you could talk about Theo Epstein, and then I'll ask you my question. Okay,
well, here's the thing with Theo. I think Theo's here to find VC money to sell the team. And I said that
you've said it before
on EEI, and here, because you know what it was? It was, he's getting through to John Henry. Really? Or have we seen a pretty consistent pattern here for the last 5 or 6 years when it comes to the big name players? So if old Theo can't get through, why is he there? Because for those who have followed the history of Theo since he went to Chicago, he's now a money guy and he's connected to big dollars. And what's an easy way for 75-year-old John Henry? What's he going to do? Turn it over to the wife? Are you ready for the Linda Pizzuti decisions with the Red Sox, Jay? Or is Theo there to end up being the bridge to what would be a graceful transition to someone that's going to come in and give John Money, or John Money, might as well call him that, a bunch of money for just the Red Sox, and he'll keep all that land around Fenway Park, the way they do with Liverpool and all that kind of stuff. So you can really pick your poison. I think, is Theo going to go find someone that's going to come in and be an owner is hungry to win, or is it going to go to Linda Pizzuti? And we get ready for those decision makes. Jesus God, I can't even think of that.
Outstanding stuff, especially some of that Theo Epstein stuff. And because you've made a similar point before about Theo's role, I was glad to have that in my mind during this time. Do you know what I mean? Because I wish you were wrong, but I think you might be right on. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of not some straight thought, it takes a little bit of extrapolation to get where you get, but it's hard for me to disagree with you there. I would be fascinated to know if, let's say it was young Theo running the team, and this isn't what I was going to ask you. But we'll forget the money.
No, very different. No, very different.
No, but let's say it was young Theo. Like yep. I get, or you know what? Forget young Theo. I want to ask you, Gresh. Try to forget the money stuff, the big picture stuff.
Okay.
Aren't you, as a Red Sox fan, kind of with me and glad that he's out of the clubhouse to maybe have a better vibe there, or no?
No, there can be a benefit, but losing the stick is a lot. And I think the one thing that sticks with the players in all of this is, God dang, these guys in the front office can't communicate with us. Because if you just look at the last,
you keep coming back to that.
But yeah, and if you're a player, there's only so much Alex Cora can cover up. And it also became evident that this guy, if he wasn't insubordinate, they at least viewed him saying no to first and third again as being insubordinate enough to be able to move on from the guy. Now, dudes in the clubhouse might not feel that way.
Well, I'm just very optimistic. I mean, I think there are guys like Jaron Duran, you're going to get paid probably. Roman Anthony, maybe you can really build this group and have them sort of grow together. What I wanted to ask you, Cody put in the chat at one point, I want to find it. This is Cody. I'm quoting.
Yep.
Quote, Bregman will be locked up. Unquote. I hope you're right, Cody. I really hope you're right. Gresh, what do you think about Bregman? I know you said earlier, like, is he going to want to stick around? I think he does want to stick around with this team, but do you think they'll try and do something this year, or do you think he's going to enter free agency? Talk to me a little bit about AB.
I'm expecting him to opt out because his agent will tell him to do so. And
I agree.
Unless the Red Sox end up going on some kind of run that becomes magical where Bregman gets, and if I may use the line from the great Steve Buckley, the Boston baseball experience. It can go good and it can go bad. And maybe to your point, Jay, to match your enthusiasm on Bregman, what Bregman really needs is a playoff run, or feel what it is like here on the home team side whenever the team is behind you and you're in the playoffs. Yes. If it's one game in the wild card, he'll get a snippet of it, but not enough to keep him here. Because good.
No. I think, honestly, even being there in the regular season, I'm sure he's already felt a little bit of that juice. Ironically, if the playoffs began today, I believe the 6 seed Red Sox would go at the 3 seed Houston Astros.
That's very interesting in terms of the whole Bregman ties. But at the end of the day, my worry about Bregman is not about Bregman. It's about his representation. And what are they going to be telling him? Because I do believe he's a Boris guy. And while Boris is open to doing business, I think Boris is also open to keeping his guys' options open. And if the money is only going to go up and Bregman can have, a hot final 2 months or something like that, there's every bit of evidence for now Alex Bregman to start to question, what are we really doing here? And if Bregman looks around and sees that Campbell and Anthony and these guys are 2 or 3 years away from being good, if you're clockwise with Bregman, are you just going to take the dough and Trevor Story it? Or do you look at it and say, I can get pretty close to the same money in a state that doesn't tax me as much and find a roster that might be a little more ready to win now. We forget about that. Jay, I know you and I don't get political, all right? But when Massachusetts voted in the millionaires tax, the guys who were going to lose the most were the NBA players and the baseball players. And at least one NBA guy that I know of told the Celtics, no, I'm not signing here because I'm going to get whacked in taxes. So now if you're the Red Sox and everyone's getting hip to that game, are you going to be, if Alex Bregman can get $35 million tax-free in the state of Texas, are the Boston Red Sox ready to pay $43.5 million a year to be able to balance it out? That, unfortunately, has become a competitive imbalance for the Red Sox that they now need to try to pay their way through. And the John Henry, who was on one side of the aisle to put that in, it's now hurting the other side of John Henry's business because now he just doesn't want to pay these guys an ass ton of money.
It's a great point. And from a football standpoint, Chris Godwin, who re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, very well could have become a New England Patriot had that tax situation been different. With respect to the baseball team and the roster playing in Boston, congratulations, boys, on a 6-game winning streak, 2 games above 500. We've talked a lot about April, May, June, what these months mean. When you're hovering around mid, to use your term and the term the youngins use, you got to go one way or another, whether it's lose 6 in a row, win 6 in a row, 7 of 8, 9 of 10, 11 of 12, whatever it may be. The only way you can win 8 or 9 in a row is by winning 6 in a row. And so for me, I'm super excited that I feel like as we sit here on a Tuesday, and let's say we weren't talking about the trade and it didn't happen, for the first time, I'd be sitting here with something to actually talk about the baseball team, right? So Hunter Dobbins, couple great starts against the Yankees, had some interesting words to say as well prior to that second start, which was a gem at Fenway Park. But I'm like, there it is. Said it before, that if the Yankees were the last team to give me a contract, I'd retire. That's a good thing
line
to say, especially to endear yourself to the Boston fans. But Gresh, I'm pretty excited sitting here on 617 day, June 17th, on gas about this team. I'm gassed.
Well, I hope they fulfill your expectations, friend. I really do. I hope that this pitching pops. I know John Henry and his ways have now beaten me down. And now all I can think about is who is going to take this thing over. This guy's not going to run this thing until he's 90 years old, for God's sakes. I'm not wishing Denny ill will on John Henry at all. But it just makes me wonder, where is all of this going? Because I hate following the money, but when I follow the money, that's where the signs are. They really scare the hell out of me. And one other thing, too, that should be noted. It is evident that Craig Breslow cannot functionally communicate in a front office. There have been people behind the scenes. That's a big. Now, look, for everybody who got a boner for when Theo Epstein came aboard and thinking, oh, he'll change minds. That is one tangible thing that Theo Epstein can unequivocally help the general manager with. And yet, we sit here for a second GM. It was Chaim Bloom before, and now this guy who we're at a trade deadline, poor communication, didn't tell the players. Again, if Theo wasn't out scouring earth for billions of dollars, maybe he would be there and help these guys with that.
I think your point that you've made at multiple stages of the last couple of months, you just proved it right there, that you think Theo's concerned with that. Dude's they're probably who knows how much he's involved with anything related to baseball, to your point. It's fascinating. One thing I just want to mention real quick, Cody put it in the chat, which I think is noteworthy. We talked about Trevor Story being a big part of them not playing good baseball as a team. He's a big piece. He's played very well, and that's a big part of them playing well. So, a lot of the performance of the players is why they've won 6 in a row. I bet you I bet the vibes in that locker room out on the West Coast right now are a 10.
Yeah, I think the team feels okay. I don't know if Cora feels okay. And right now they'll ride the short-term wave. So let's see where this lands by the end of the month.
Cora doesn't feel okay, that he's worried about his job, you think?
No. I think he can't feel good about the fact that he is now under his watch lost Betts, Bogarts, and Devers.
I just, the Betts Devers comparison to me, it's really hard. There are certain comparables and then certain things that don't feel the same. I believe for Alex Cora that this would put a big smile on his face. Devers has been a really difficult part of this season, I would think, for Alex Cora. What if they hadn't won 6 in a row and they were like a game or two under 500? I wonder if the vibes would be different. Everyone talks about the timing couldn't have been worse. Maybe couldn't have been better. And it's interesting, your reaction to Alex Cora and when I said, do you think he's going to get fired? You said, no, maybe not. Right. There were a lot of talks for his head, right? Something had to give. The Devers thing may be what drops. I believe so much in culture. I know I'm a broken record, but Alex Cora being sort of part of the leadership of this team and this future, I don't know. I'm bullish on these boys.
I am on Cora, but again, I'll go back to these are things that Alex can't control. So therefore, he can't explain them to his players. So therefore, he's left in the dark like everybody else. And this is where now again, Cora was, I'm sure, a part of the decision to ultimately say, okay, we got to pull the plug on Raffy. He's not listening to me. He's not listening to Poppy. He's just not going to listen to anybody. So that I can understand. I think from the Cora end, there is I know how to talk to these guys. I know how to connect with these guys. And I think for Alex, in the little bit that I know him, it'll feel like a little bit of a sense of failure that he couldn't get through to Raffy Devers to be able to keep him on the roster. Because again, we forget, your leading home run guy, your leading RBI guy, out the window in one fell swoop. And I know there's all the Liverpool stuff out there and things like that. Here's what I would say. That's Premier League, if I'm not mistaken, right? I don't want to step on my own tail here. But when you look at the amount of money in that league, and then you compare the overall monies of that league to the overall monies of Major League Baseball, there's no cross-pollination going on, I don't think. One doesn't lead to another, in my opinion. When they were pumping money into Fenway, when they were pumping money into whatever they call that field over there that they play in Liverpool and stuff like that, I think they're different revenue streams because they're different entities. And I think Jay will be sold as such. You don't sell the whole portfolio, you sell pieces of it. And, that Liverpool franchise has a pretty decent valuation on it to begin with. And again, I hate to go back to follow the money, but I just go back to what is John Henry? John Henry, Jay, is nothing more than numbers on a piece of paper. That's his way of managing. And we got 4 championships out of it. And thank the good Lord for that.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but I will say, you say that's his way of managing, but we don't, when he came down and met with Devers, who knows if it was like, all right, Raffy, do you want to be here? Or you want me to look to get you out of here? Cause it doesn't seem like you want to, who knows? I mean, I liked that at the time when he went to talk to him. And I like the organization being proactive, whatever they did to keep him hitting, to keep them in sort of contention and also keep his market value existing.
Right. Anyway. And then they didn't shop him. But again, I'll go back.
How many teams going to eat that? What, 254?
Well, the thing is, no, you know what? No. You know what hit? You know what? You hit on it. That's why they didn't shop him, because we're only looking for somebody to give them players and take the whole contract. They weren't willing to swap players to try to ultimately make teams better. So the whole what is next? I think what is next for the Red Sox is, here's what you got. We're going to roll the balls out. We'll roll the bats out. We're just going to play. And wherever it lands is wherever it lands. We make the playoffs, great. Because there's still the trade deadline to come. And do you really think in 6 weeks that all of a sudden they're going to pull a Heim Bloom and then be like, well, we're kind of in contention. Let's go get Hosmer from San Diego, but let's trade away our catcher, send mixed signals and stuff like that. I don't even know, Jay, if these next 6 weeks before the trade deadline could do anything to sway the organization to do anything more than what they've done. It might be a small tweak here or there. They're not bringing in money. They're not adding payroll. And I don't think they're interested in swapping players. Hey, I got a great pitcher. Hey, I need a hitter. Hey, we can match up and make it work. I just think here's what we got. And now it's cross your if you're hoping for the playoffs, cross your fingers and hope for the best. But John Henry got the biggest objective done that he wanted, which was cross off a line item.
Well, I can't disagree with any of that. And I hate to sound like Bill Belichick, but to me, right, a lot of this has to do with tonight, Walker Buehler, and what he can do to continue this streak going. Because if they win, it could change and potentially force the hand, even though I agree with what you said about they've probably made the decision on what they're going to do regardless.
And I hate being this way, and I hate it that the Red Sox have made us feel this way. But it's really been their actions, the lack of communication, and then just openly coming out and, BSing all of us when it came to, whatever Zoom press conferences management ended up doing. Let's talk about something that can be a little disappointing, but it's also celebratory as well. Jay, you said something earlier about 617 day. Of course, in and around Boston. And there it is, baby. 6/17/08 and 6/17/24. So a year ago today, we were celebrating the Boston Celtics having won a world championship. It looks like Oklahoma City is ultimately going to close out Indiana in the NBA Finals. But will the C's win another with Tatum and Brown, Jay? I can't believe we're at this point in both of their careers. But on this Celtics anniversary, will there be another 6/17 day down the road that we'll be celebrating?
Yes, is my short answer. And I think if Tatum and Brown stay together, I think there's, I hate to use the word again, intangible type of benefits to something like that. If you're asking me, would I prefer a trade and Giannis come play with Jason Tatum instead of Jaylen Brown? I guess it's hard to sit here and tell you that maybe they're a better team with Jaylen Brown than Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know if I would say that, but I like the relationship with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I also think they benefit each other from a leadership standpoint because neither one of them are true alpha vocal leaders. I also believe that they still can get better. And I deeply believe in Brad Stevens to give them multiple opportunities to have rosters good enough around them, if healthy, to put them in positions to contend again. So I think they do have a great chance to do so. And I would much prefer see them have a down year next year and build around Tatum and Brown moving forward. Because even if we use Teddy Atlas's fighting analogy about getting 20 or 30% better after becoming a champion, I believe in the champions that are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So I really hope they stay together. And I believe it won't be just one when it's all said and done if they do remain together.
I'm with you in that they're going to get another one. The question is when, because next year almost feels like, Jay, in a way, it's setting up to be kind of a half pregnant year. You'll be in the playoffs. You're not going to fall that far, but you're not going to be the favorite. Tatum will have just gotten back. You're not going to be at full Voltron. And then it's who's around these guys. And there was a trade that went down in the NBA on Saturday that may have changed some things for Brad Stevens. I don't know if you saw this, but Desmond Bane, who was maybe the best three-point shooter on the Memphis Grizzlies, got traded to Orlando for KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Cole Anthony, and 4 first-round picks and a pick swap. Now, I would say this to you, Jay. I am not advocating moving this player. However, you're going to tell me that you couldn't get something close to that for Derek White, where you get 2 rotational players and a gaggle of first-round picks to be able to restock the war chest? Because when I look at Drew Holiday, that's the guy I would love to move, right? But some teams might say, it's a big salary. I don't know. Do you just live with him and play him 50 games and pray to God he's okay for the postseason? Because it feels like that Desmond Bane trade actually added value for a possible Derek White trade that would open up Pandora's box a little bit for Brad Stevens to retool this roster. And I don't want Derek
Great
White
stuff.
gone.
I know.
I don't want him gone. But the value there, just like, think about this. They gave up Romeo Langford, essentially, and a first-round pick to get Derek White. And if you bring him in and you win a championship and you have another run with that guy, or you brought him in, you won a title, and then someone says, yeah, I'll split that $28 million into 2 players for you and give you 3 or 4 first-round picks, it might just be a deal that Brad Stevens can't refuse.
Man, I appreciate what you said, and I think it's really smart, and I think it's different than what we've talked about in the past. I think we've talked about Kristaps Porzingis might have more value staying on the roster because I think there'll be a lot of questions on the open market about him. We know Derek White would have more value than Drew Holiday on the open market, and certainly more value to the Boston Celtics than Drew Holiday, with respect to 2-time champion Drew Holiday. But your point is very well taken, that if you are going to think about your roster and you want to keep Brown and Tatum together, Derek White most certainly will have the most market value. And dare I say, perhaps you are trading him at the absolute peak, right? If you were to tell me Derek White's prime, it could be today. You know what I mean? Or yesterday, and now he's out, right? Gosh, it's a really difficult swallow, because I think, I think we've talked in the past. Okay, well, you got Brown. As long as you got Brown, Tatum, and Derek White, trade everything else and just bring back minimum guys. Nah, it's not so easy to do it that way.
Right.
And, I think the Pritchard may be a guy you need to move on from because he has a favorable contract. But you know how NBA trades, salaries matching up is a big component. So I think it's really interesting what you say. And I think it may be a necessary thing, especially given that next season might need to be 2 or 3 steps back.
Yeah, no, you're right. I it's a step backwards to ultimately take 2 or 3 steps forward with a rehabbed Tatum and a rehabbed Jaylen Brown. The hard part of these deals for the Celtics is, you get into the second apron and the trade rules become different. But look, I've got no indication, Jay, that Brad Stevens under a new owner is starting to think, hey, I got to get the hell out of here, which is great for all of us. And quite honestly, with the mess that college basketball has become, I always thought that Brad Stevens would go back to the college game. I don't know if it's worth it anymore for a guy like him to go back to the college game and re-recruit kids every year and get into NIL. What a bunch of mind-numbing schlock.
Well, look, my identical twin brother has missed more than 100 days a year with his kids. And Brad Stevens, and we saw him on the podium with his kids as a coach. I guarantee you, Brad Stevens, there are nights with his wife in his living room where he sits and smiles with his legs crossed with a glass of Cabernet, laughing because he's making very good American dollars to be able to have a great balance of life. And I think that, who knows? Yeah, Joe Mazzulla ain't gonna, Joe Mazzulla probably not gonna want to sit in an office, but I think for Brad Stevens, this may suit him very well. And he might have made a great decision for himself very early. I think he's gonna be very happy sitting in that seat. And if you want to go run another organization other than the greatest organization, one of the greatest in professional sports with all the history, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he might look at the Danny Ainge route of ultimately becoming the president of an organization
of
and
the
then putting
maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? That's a great call. I didn't think of that because they're riding high right now. But once this group goes poof and like Rick Carlisle walks out the door, that's an interesting point of, Brad Stevens maybe being called home to Indiana to maybe run that organization. I think over the next week, we are going to get a ton of NBA news. And now that Giannis supposedly is staying in Milwaukee, the next big thing is going to be Kevin Durant. And Jay, I say this with all due respect to Kevin Durant, the basketball player. Thank God that the Celtics cannot make an easy swap with Phoenix to get Kevin Durant because they've always been tantalized by the guy. I want nothing to do with that whiny bitch. And you can't even call him that because he's got his burner accounts on social media to be able to whine at people. I want nothing to do with that guy. Everywhere he's gone, it's been, oh, we'll powder your bum and then send you on your way when you and your little fine feathered friends put us in cap jail and we're stuck with Bradley Beal because we tried to appease your ass.
All of that's fair. I don't expect him in any way. There's no way he's coming to the Celtics. I don't think there's interest on either side. What I will say, the spot Durant wants to go, because say what you want about everything you just said.
Yep.
The game is still so friggin' elite.
He's got a game left. He can score.
The team he wants to go to, the San Antonio Spurs, couldn't be a more perfect destination for him, in my opinion. So and I think the Rockets were another team he named. So I do think if he goes to the right place, I would love to see him on a team like the Spurs juxtaposed to jumping to the Warriors when he did back in the day. But I don't see him coming to Boston under any circumstance.
No, and thank God. And that Houston thing is interesting because if I'm not mistaken, Ime Udoka was an assistant coach in Brooklyn when Durant put his collection of babies together. So he knows that Ime is more like Uncle Ime than it is Ime, the head coach. He can. That's the one thing I will say about Durant. He can deal with a tough-minded head coach as long as that head coach knows when to back off and sort of smooch his rear end when he feels he needs it.
Well, and, De'Aaron Fox and Wemby, to me, though, in San Antonio, those two particular guys to pair him with just sounds like a good fit. Whereas certainly the 3-pack, in Phoenix didn't work. The 3-pack in Brooklyn didn't work. So
yeah, and they had a 3-pack in Oklahoma City years ago that was Harden, Durant, and freaking Westbrook. And they couldn't make that work. Hey, I know that we have game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight, and the Florida Panther could close out the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Final. And I know you're down in the belly of the beast there in Miami, and you've said that people have been following along and people are paying attention. It was disappointing when they traded Brad Marchand from the Bruins to Florida, Jay, because I think for you and me and others, it was kind of really that was the true closing of the chapter of the Zdeno Bergeron kind of era in Boston when Marchand. I love the fact that this guy can end up winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. They put him on a third line. They left him alone. And the guy has been an absolute stud. And I know that the Boston fan in us was sad at that moment because of what it meant. But now seeing Brad Marchand be successful again, it's made me fall in love with Marshy all over again, the way I did in 2011 when he was doing this stuff and he was a no-name guy.
That's a great way to put it, falling in love with Marchand all over again. It's really interesting because before he was traded, you talked about you proposed the idea that they trade him under the full assumption that, okay, buddy, we're going to let you go compete, but then we're going to sign you again as a free agent after the postseason. Unfortunately, it seems like that's very unlikely to happen because to your point, it does feel like closing a book on something. But I really like what you said about him falling in love with him all over again. So quickly, Marchand became the first player to score at least 5 goals in 2 separate Stanley Cup Final series with 2 different teams. He scored 5 goals in 7 games for the Bruins in 2011 in the Stanley Cup Championship win over the Vancouver Canucks. Scored 2 goals in game 5. We're going to talk about those, right? So now he has 6 goals in the Stanley Cup Final, right? The idea that he's going to win the Conn Smythe, probably not going to happen. That's an award for the entire Stanley Cup postseason, not just the final series like in the NBA. But in game 5, his 2 goals, like both borderline unassisted, right? But, it's a 0-0 game. And if you go back to game 4, Panthers are up 3-0. They blow the 3-0 lead. Edmonton takes a 4-3 lead. Florida ties it with like 19 seconds left at 4, then lose in overtime. Then you travel to Edmonton, and Marchand, heart rate remains the same, gives 0 fucks, right? Scores the first goal off like a center. Was the first goal the one off the center ice faceoff? Yeah,
I think
which
so,
was just
yes.
insane, right? And he splits the defenders and just like clean goal. And then the second one, which just unbelievable finish, right? So I'm just like blown away. I couldn't be more into. I do not root for Florida teams. The Heat are probably my second least favorite team organization of all time. I'm rooting against the Panthers with every fiber of my being. Not anymore. I'm rooting for 63 every step of the way to hoist another one. But I think he's probably going to finish his career down here as well.
Agreed. Absolutely. And you know what? He has even mentioned the whole tax thing as well as to part of a reason to not go back to the Northeast. And how about this? What a great line from Matthew Tkachuk. He seems to keep finding another gear. The more important the game, the better he is. And you know what it is? They didn't put undue pressure on Marchand. He didn't have to come in to be the captain. He didn't have to come in to be the first line goal scorer. He didn't have to come in and assume a role other than just go play hockey. You know, to me, it's kind of the role Aaron Rodgers in this year with Pittsburgh. Just go play football. Don't F around with anything else. Just go play, and let it take care of itself.
You know, for him to do what he's doing at this age and stage, and maybe I haven't looked at his ice time, but maybe it's being brilliantly handled, because there are often times where, especially on those two goals, where he looks like almost like he's playing peewee hockey, like up an age group, right? But he's like the best player, right? So he's like 8 years old playing with 11-year-olds. And he's just skating around everybody with these, like some of his goals this postseason are of such brilliance, right? There are a lot of goals, right? Sam Bennett, who's got 15 goals in the postseason, you know, he made a great play in his goal in the last game, but you know, it's off a ricochet. Brad Marchand is creating his own opportunities at this stage, right? Yeah, Brad Marchand is Paul Bissonnette. Great tweet, Cody. Brad Marchand, the Hall of Famer. Conversation is over. Now, Gresh, you felt like this conversation was over prior to even this postseason.
Yeah,
right?
hell yeah. That Biz Nasty is kind of getting a little late on the train here. And I know that, I know there was somebody who does some work for NFL Network who tweeted back right away being like, this infuriates me. The fact that this guy played in the league and didn't think Marchand was a Hall of Famer already, which I was with you and like everybody else, I thought he was. And it's just been, you know, it's a reminder, I think, in the sport of hockey, Jay, that you kind of go out the way you come in. And if you think about it, 23-year-old Brad Marchand, who we were introduced to as a third-line player who ultimately moved his way up when the Bruins made their run and won the Cup. And now you look at Marchand, he goes into Florida. He's just a third-line guy. But Paul Maurice knows, if I'm going to throw him in with my first-line guys, he's going to know what to do. He's going to know how to handle it, just like he did when he first got into the league. And what's amazing is at 23 years old, he was buzzing around in 2011. At 37 years old, he's still buzzing around in 2025.
You know, and we talk about going back to back as a champion in professional sports, no matter the sport. And A.J. Brown, Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver, had a great quote after the season that said, if we're going to win it again, lots going to be different about next season. Players, things are going to have to change, going to have to be a different vibe. You see how the Celtics, things were different. So for the Florida Panthers to repeat, this might have been absolutely what they needed to get past one of the absolute all-time greats in McDavid on the other side and his team around him. So, by the way, this just occurred to me. Did you see McDavid in the locker room when they were down 3-0 or 3? I mean, what a legend. Gosh, I should have had Cody pull it up, but I mean, just I don't even want, I'm not going to do it justice. Chase Connor McDavid in the locker room. During game 4.
And if you're the NHL, I do not think you're disappointed in all of this, because the best player is still chasing his cup. See LeBron James' early career. See Steph Curry, once he got famous, chasing the championship. And I think there's other, you know, AJ, to be fair, and I don't know if I touched on this with you, we're talking about a third finals in a row for Florida. Has anybody brought up the dynasty word? Or have more people talked about Connor McDavid not getting his cup? And frankly, instead of looking at Florida and saying they're next, people are like, when's Connor going to get his?
It's a great point. And I would say 3 straight cup final appearances, right? You know, even if you only win the one, I know you got to win that second chip to really be considered a dynasty, but this team is not much different to me than the Boston Celtics 2008, winning the championship
Good
2010.
point.
They get to game 7,
Yep.
very borderline dynasty already. So if they're able to finish the job 100%, if you were to told me, all right, we're going to do a gas morning drive show. We're going to do about 40 minutes of Red Sox, do about 15 minutes of Bruins,
Yep.
5 minutes of Celtics, and no pigskin. I would tell you you're out of your mind, but I love it. Only a matter of time before the Patriots become the focal point of the motherfucking show. And you know what? Until we're big time, I'm going to drop the F-bombs as I please, okay? John Anik and Andrew Gresh and Cody Merrow or anyone else that doesn't like the foul language.
We'll take them out as we're shopping this thing around. No, people will understand the concept. And now we're almost into our summer swoon. Unfortunately, now it's almost all baseball. And thank the Lord that camp is going to start in August. And I know I have a family vacation in August, so I'm trying to figure out if I can bring all of this setup internationally and be able to get it to work, because we're going to the little island off of North Carolina known as Bermuda. So nice. I have to try to figure that out, because that'll be right as football gets ready and cranked up. We're going to have to do like our big NFL preview special on the way at some point, because it is just more in this great football world than what our New England Patriots are about to give us, which will be so different. Good Lord, I just can't wait. It's going to feel the way it should. It's going to be much closer to when Belichick was here, and Mike Vrabel will be the blanket that we can wrap ourselves in, and knowing that the organization has good stewardship.
I absolutely cannot wait.
I am with you. No dirty boxing for this guy. You said the next date is on the books. You said, is it announced or?
DBX3 was going to be July 26th. And then CEO Malky Kawa was on with John and Kenny on the Anik and Florian podcast yesterday and said, I think we're moving it to August 1st because the venue is going to change, but it will be in Miami. My best guess as of today is August 1st. He didn't like my hair at all, CEO Malky Kawa. He called my hair. He said all the comments is stupid hair, right? He called the hair stupid a couple times. I had some favorable or unfavorable words that I fired back at him that I don't need to share on this program. But yeah, hopefully, I know he wants me to shave my head. I'm not going to do that. So maybe that might jeopardize my role on DBX3. We'll see about it.
Yeah. And I think you'll be okay. And, yeah, there are, as someone who's been in the business for 28 years, I can give him a bunch of other things other than your hair to maybe be a little worried about. On Thursday, I got a double header. I got Sirius XM in the morning, 6 to 9 on Juneteenth, and then I'm doing Infinity Sports Network 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Friday night Infinity 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Back on Sirius on Saturday in the morning, and then Sunday morning on the Infinity Sports Network as well. So catch me horn it up. I mean, nice. Just working my tail off everywhere.
Thursday morning back in for DA and Babchick. Is that correct?
It is. Yes. And I asked, and and I no, you'll be good. You'll be getting a call. You're booked for 8:35 to talk about dirty boxing and MMA and all that stuff. I'm just letting you know, because you won't. Although would I be messing up a Jason Anik sleep-in day, because the kids don't have school on Juneteenth? So what do you make it to on a non-school day in terms of being able to sleep in?
No Jason Anik sleep-in days. The only sleep-in days, ironically, are fight week when on the road. John and I get our best rest the Friday night into Saturday, go to bed like midnight till 8:30 a.m. I'm old. My kids are up early.
I love you for saying
no such thing.
I love you for saying that, because when I used to travel for college football, you'd spend all day Friday traveling. I'd get to the, Towson, Maryland Hair Care Tire Center and Airport, and then, go check into the Hampton Inn or whatever near the stadium. And you're right. Like, I don't have to, I can set my alarm for a full 8 hours of sleep. What Bingo. The hell is this?
Bingo. I come back in town, and what's interesting, oftentimes when we come back from Vegas, it's a red eye or whatever. So I have a night of sleep where I lose, but it really is interesting. The weigh-ins for these UFC fights are Friday morning. So if John and I I hate to say it, sound old, but if we can go to bed early enough, I sound like a Cody. Cody's turned his program off. On Friday, you almost can get 2 back-to-back nights of good sleep, which affects your brain, affects your performance. It's huge. So when you have young kids and you don't get to sleep, and then you go on the road to work, it's just ironic how it puts you in a position to maybe get the sleep that you don't get when you're home.
And just for juxtaposition for those who are watching, my wife got up at like 9:30. My youngest woke up, 20-year-old. He woke up today at 10:15 to be at his internship at 11 a.m. And I think the 23-year-old who's not caddying today is listening to music in his room right now, having probably woke up about 11:30. I think he rolled in the house last night at 3:45. So
I love it.
We're on the polar opposite. By the way, party at my house on a Saturday night because my youngest is having some people over. So if anybody wants to come sit with my wife and I as we're just out on the patio killing time, smoking a cigar or something like that, with all of these people roaming around our house, which, by the way, Jay, you bring a bunch of 20-year-olds around, a little bit of eye candy. I'm just saying, like all of a sudden you turn around and look, and then, or my wife is like nudging me and saying, "Hey, look at those." And that really happened last time out. That's it for us. That's it.
Mike.
What was that? I missed. All right, we're out of here with gas. We'll see you next week.